So many familiar faces here today. Hello, everybody. We're going to get started now. Good afternoon. Welcome. And I'm Jamie Pasquinelli, District Manager of ULI Pittsburgh. So happy to see all your smiling faces today. So glad you could join us. As always, thank you to our sponsors for making this program possible. Just some housekeeping. Please make sure you have your mics muted throughout the program to prevent any distractions. Also, we will be engaging in a Q&A. So at any point, please feel free to enter your question into the chat, and we will get to your question. This program will be recorded, and I'll send you out the recording as soon as I have it edited and all that good stuff. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Dusty Kirk, our WLI chair. Thanks, Dusty.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you to all of our sponsors for 2021. We are so glad that you sponsor our programs. I have to thank Jamie Pasquinelli, because we could not do this without her. She keeps us on track and the show running every day for us. We have Lisa Hart and Georgia Petropoulos. They started planning this program prior to the pandemic, and they persevered. And we are so lucky to have Cheryl Moon-Sirianni with us, although we wish it was a in-person meeting where we could have, I think one of us coined Wine Wednesdays or something. So at any rate, I'm going to introduce you to our moderator today, Lisa Hart. And Lisa is at M&T Bank, and she has been, and I think there's maybe a little merger going on there, but she can tell us about that. She has been in commercial real estate banking for 17 years. And not only that, she is a scholar, and because she is a civil and environmental engineer from Penn State and the Schreier's Honor College. And she also has an MBA from Carnegie Mellon. So if you didn't know that about Lisa, you might want to talk to her about it after. So she's a perfect person to do this interview with Cheryl. And the most important thing is, I think, is she's a mother of 2 kids and does all this at the same time, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And we all know that during the pandemic, especially, that was really extra duty work. So I'm going to turn this over to Lisa now. Thank you all.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for my friend Cheryl. Cheryl and I actually have been serving on a different Penn State board, because she's a Penn State alum as well, for the Beaver campus here. So, it's my pleasure to be able to be moderating this for all of you. But Cheryl is the district executive for PennDOT District 11, which includes Allegheny, Beaver, and Lawrence counties. But when you put that all together, it's about 8,500 miles of roadway, 1,800 bridges, and a staff of about 787 people. So I can't even imagine. So congratulations, Cheryl. But Cheryl's also a lifetime member of the American Society of Highway Engineers, a member of the Engineers Society of Western PA, and a member of the Women's Transportation Seminar. She's a registered professional engineer and has been since 1992. And as I mentioned, is also a graduate of Penn State with a civil engineering degree. She's worked for PennDOT for almost 35 years, holding various positions in addition to her district executive role now. She was, prior to that, the assistant district executive for design for 13 years, the contract management engineer, and also a project manager. And she's been extremely instrumental in development of many projects across our region during that time. So welcome, Cheryl. We're very excited to have you and have you answer some questions for us and provide us a lot of really good insight. So the first question we wanted to talk to you today about is just talk to us about your career path and how you ended up as the district executive.
And thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me. And honestly, I do wish we were in person, because there's nothing I like better than being surrounded with a lot of really intelligent, successful people. It just makes me feel so energized. So I'm going to be energized by talking to you here. And secondly, I think I should be interviewing you, Lisa, after that, that introduction, because you have way more qualifications than I do. But anyhow, maybe next time, Dusty, maybe I can do that another time. So I mean, I've been in PennDOT for 35 years, as you just heard. It's a long time. I actually started, I didn't actually want to be a civil engineer. I wanted to be a petroleum engineer because when you're in high school, that was making the most money back in 1982, 83. So of course you want to go into the field that's making the most money, right? At least that's what I thought. Really didn't like it a whole lot. Worked in Tanning in the summer for PennDOT. I started actually in PennDOT in 1983 as an inspector. Thought it was kind of cool, went back to school, changed my major, and ended up working for PennDOT for 3 more summers, and started right out of college. So you could say I'm of that old generation, though it's not like the new generation where I've been at the same firm ever since I started. Worked in District 10 up in Indiana for a few years, and then moved down to the big city. I've worked in design the whole time. I was a bridge design engineer actually by when I graduated and when I first started, and moved into roadway design. Became a project manager, became the contract management engineer, which was kind of cool, where you got to get involved in every project and meet a lot of contractors and manage some pretty significant projects. And then was fortunate to become the AD for design. Which in our district is, I'm going to say probably across the state, the district AD for design in District 11 is probably one of the coolest jobs statewide, because of just all the neat projects that we have in our district and the great people we get to work with. And then I got promoted to this job when Dan Cessna left to take a job with Michael Baker Corporation. I was promoted to this position, and I love it. I can't say I've ever had a bad position. PennDOT's a great place to work, and I work with some amazing people, and that's kind of how I got to where I'm at.
Excellent, thank you. So during your tenure with PennDOT, what have been the 3 most challenging or interesting projects that you've been involved with?
I mean, I can tell you, I've literally been involved in hundreds of projects. You've probably all swore at me many times, in your past. When I was the AD for design, it's every single project that we did in our 3-county region, Beaver County, Beaver, Lawrence, and Allegheny counties, I had a hand in. To label just 3, there's a couple that stand out, which probably stand out to all of you too. The Route 30 slide project was probably one of the most memorable projects in my career. And it wasn't because of anything fantastic with the engineering, because it really wasn't. We fixed a slide. We fix slides all the time. It was the impact to the people. We had no processes in place for it. We had to relocate, the 2 apartment complexes, and some of the folks had difficulty. They were, in wheelchairs and had difficulty moving and finding homes for them, and keeping everybody safe. That was definitely a challenge. And it was also, it happened so suddenly. We're just thankful to this day that everybody was safe. That got national press. So that doesn't happen a whole lot in the Pittsburgh area. So that's probably one of the most memorable. We did win a governor's award for it. And I'm going to tell you, that was one of the most projects with I'd say the strongest amount of teamwork. Allegheny County was so helpful. Their emergency services, folks from Salvation Army, just it was just a great team effort, that project. Some of the other ones, I don't know if you all remember, one of my first biggest projects I ever designed myself. Like we do work in-house at PennDOT. And then we do work with consultants. So we have a very large design staff of 109 people. So we actually do, most districts don't have that. We actually design a lot of projects in-house, and then we have consultants do projects. One of the largest projects, the next 2 projects I'll mention here was the May West Bend. I don't know if you'll remember that. It was Route 8. It was probably almost 30 years ago. We kind of cut into the hillside and widened that road out. But that was a great project to design, and had some long-lasting effects. And then the Freedom Road project in Beaver County. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Beaver County. You are, Lisa. You know that project. We actually, created pretty much a new roadway to connect Beaver County to Cranberry, and we're still working on it. The last phase is happening now. So when that one's done, goes out to bid here very shortly. Those are probably three of the best. There's been so many though. I mean, the Holton Bridge project, the missing ramps to 79, there's been so many cool projects. West End Bridge, or West End Connector, there's been a lot. So I could say I've had the pleasure of really working on a lot of great projects.
What about, do any of those stand out to you as being one that was super fun? Or do you have a different project that you actually consider fun more so than interesting?
You know, when I mean, fun's relative. As a civil engineer working on any large project, and as a public servant, that's what we do. That is fun to us. Collaborating with others, with stakeholders, I would consider that fun. You know, seeing these things completed is actually very fun. The ones, like I said, as you work on a team, you meet so many interesting people. I've met so many great managers from municipalities, developers. There's been so many great people that we've worked with along the way. You know, I could say, you know, a lot of them have been fun. Now, one of the most fun times I had was recently when I had the pleasure of going out on the Gateway Clipper with Secretary Buttigieg about a month and a half ago. That was probably one of the most memorable things I've ever done at PennDOT, and that was pretty fun. So, you know, being in this position and just, you know, government is government. You know, sometimes we have a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of rules and regulations, but sometimes we get to do the cool things too. So I could say I have had quite a bit of fun, just maybe not the way everybody else would consider it to be fun.
Well, I am a civil engineer at heart, so some of that stuff sounds extremely fun as well. So with everything we read in today's, you know, press about infrastructure and issues around infrastructure and things like that, how do you at PennDOT prioritize the projects for Western Pennsylvania and then sort of fit in, obviously, you know, you talked about the Route 30 slide, prioritize obviously the emergencies and things like that for our area?
It's hard. It's very hard right now. There's so many competing interests. We do have, you know, certain types of measurements we do. We have our bridge inspectors that obviously, you know, go out and inspect our bridges every couple of years, and they have rating systems as to which ones, you know, need the most attention. And then we have also the same thing for roadways. We inventory them every year. They survey them and inventory them. And we do have those basic metrics to work off of. But sometimes the question is, you know, to our maintenance folks, can you hold this together? You know, this bridge here, can we hold it together a little bit longer? Is it something that's going to just fail miserably and we're going to have to close the road down? Those are kind of questions that we go over. We're going over it right now. We're starting the tip update for the next tip. We right now have over 100 slides. We can't afford them all. We need about $120 million to fix them all. And as soon as you fix one next it starts sliding. So when it comes to slides, we have kind of a prioritization list we look at. You know, is there another way to get, you know, to around this slide? You know, is this a bus route? Is it an emergency route? Is it the only way in and out of a development? How much is it going to cost? What's the traffic on the road? We weigh all these things before we decide, you know, which ones rise to the top. Obviously, something like Route 30 had to be addressed immediately. There's 30,000 vehicles a day on that road, but some of the slides are on roads that maybe have 50 vehicles a day, but it might be the only way in and out. So there's a lot of things that come into play when we're trying to juggle the little bit of money we have right now. And then in our district, I don't know if you're aware, but Allegheny County actually owns quite a bit of roadway and bridge facilities, as does the city of Pittsburgh. So Beaver and Lawrence have a few, but not near as many. But so we're competing with those other local interests for the money. And about 30% of our tip is for the city, the county, and the counties. So I don't think people realize that either. So that money has to get divided up in many ways.
Great, thank you. You mentioned just a little while ago about, you know, various levels of bureaucracy and working through all that. What are some of the most challenging aspects of dealing with local, state, and federal governments, and how do you get everyone to work together for the success of your projects?
I think there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of challenges. I think the most part, as I mentioned, is being a public servant. So are these folks. You know, so are the folks at the, you know, the local municipalities, the county. They're all dealing with the same issues we are: lack of funding, trying to stretch dollars, trying to get people where they need to go. efficiently and effectively so that we all have a common goal in mind. So we don't have a lot of problems. I think over the years, building relationships, being honest with people telling you what you can and cannot do, especially legislators, just telling them, try to work as much as you can on what you can fix, but letting folks know that maybe that's just not going to happen. And you do the same thing with municipalities. Where we see some of the issues, if you want to do, like, let's say a long corridor, let's say we want to do Route 65. If you want to do Route 65 and you want to maybe put sidewalks in or new signals in, you have a lot of different municipalities on Route 65 to deal with. And that's what you have in Allegheny County. So you would have a municipality like Swiftly, who has a lot of resources, and then right next to it, you would have a Elite Township, or a municipality that is, doesn't have hardly any resources because it's a lot smaller. So it's hard to do these long corridor type projects. 51 route, there's just many municipalities on some of these roads. So getting everybody on the same page at times can be quite difficult. And then another issue with the federal government, I don't know if all you know, but when you get federal money, there's a whole lot of strings attached to it. So if a poor local government that only has a couple people there and they don't really have an engineer, on at the ready all the time, it's very tough for them to utilize federal money. So we have to help them a lot, and we do. But it's just tough sometimes trying to navigate through all the different rules and regulations of federal dollars.
Now, how long are you in the planning stages for some of these projects, pulling everyone together like that before you actually can start the exciting part of the work?
Gosh, Lisa, that depends. We've had a project. Freedom Roads is 40 years. I tell people the story. When I started the one section, I was pregnant with my daughter, and when it was finished, she was graduating college. So some of them are that long. A typical project, maybe like a typical bridge replacement project, is probably 3 or 4 years to get from beginning to end. Some roadway projects where you don't have to purchase any right of way, or you don't have a lot of utility impacts, those can actually go in a year. But it's all dependent upon how complex the project is. And sometimes a big project, like a project on an interstate that's a $50 million project, goes quicker than a $2 million bridge project that you need to take right of way for. So they're all different time frames. I know somebody might be familiar with the Broughton or the Brownsville Road project that the county did. I think that was like 25 or 28 years. So some of these just get caught up. Sometimes it's funding. The funding comes, the funding goes. If funding comes back, a lot of times that's what delays them too.
Interesting. Thank you. So any emergencies or road slides aside, what does a typical day look like for you?
A typical COVID day or pandemic day, or a typical day when we were back in the office?
Either one, both.
I think every person on this phone call who's a professional can probably say there is no day that is ever the same. And when you're all in the shower, or whenever you do your best thinking, you have your day planned out, and it never seems to go that way. I think we can all probably say that. There's a lot of, we have a lot of masters. We have a lot of legislators. My job is a lot of time dealing with a lot of concerns from them. We have a lot of municipalities. We have some pretty large highway occupancy permits that sometimes I get involved with. We have obviously the funding needs is taking a lot of our time. We deal with funding increases on projects. I could say there's no day that is ever the same. Right now, it's a lot of these Zoom calls dealing with all of these issues. Right. The worst part, and the part you never learn in college, I think you guys are all going to agree, unless some of you are HR professionals, is the HR part of the job. Just today, we're discussing some discipline issues, some potential firing issues. When you have over 700 people that you're dealing with, ranging all the way from professional engineers with MBAs like you, Lisa, to folks that are barely graduated from college, some maybe not graduating from college or from high school. I mean, you have a whole wide spectrum and a lot of HR issues that arise that take a lot more time than you ever would anticipate when you wake up in the morning. So I guess, is that what you're kind of looking for?
Perfect, thank you. And we see every day that technology is changing our lives and changing transportation here in Western PA. And we hear a lot about, especially with the companies local to us, about AI and autonomous driving and where that may head. So how are you at PennDOT preparing for the future of technology and transportation?
To be honest with you, I'm not the best person to talk about that, but I'll also be honest and say I don't think we're where we're at. We should be with it. I think the lack of funding, the funding right now is only allowing us to try to keep our assets good. And if they're not allowing us to modernize, we just don't have the funds to modernize any of our roads network that we'd like to. I mean, we've put up some adaptive signal projects, and we're working with the city on a smart spines project for just a few corridors. But honestly, we should be looking, across the board on, what type of improvements we need to make on our highway network, for these autonomous vehicles, and we're not. We're trying to work with these groups as much as we can. We have a great relationship with them. We just don't have a lot of money to put some of the hardware and the software out there, and some of the facilities that we'd like. Now, the latest is, I think we're working with the Kiwi bot. We're working with personal delivery devices that are coming into the city, which is something that is new. We're trying to work as much as we can, but without the funds being put forth towards it, and the city project is because it got special funding. So there's not a lot of opportunity. We don't want it to get ahead of us. So we are working very well with these companies. Now, what we're trying to do too, we're looking at other opportunities, not just autonomous vehicles and AI. We are trying to modernize how the way we do business too. We're trying to go all digital delivery. That was the great thing with COVID. We stopped using paper. And I think it took the pandemic to stop us from using so much paper and start utilizing digital plans and digital signatures. And we're doing a lot with drones now, unmanned aerial systems, not drones, sorry. So anyhow, that's kind of what we're doing. Like I said, most of it's kind of signal related right now, but we're really not as advanced with our designs as we might be able to be had we had more funds associated with it.
Well, that's actually a good segue into our next question, as you talked about funding a couple of times throughout our conversation this far. Can you provide us some color on PennDOT pathways and how you're looking at future funding solutions and different things like that?
Yeah, the PennDOT Pathways initiative was put together from Secretary Gramian, because we do have such a reduction in funding. I don't think folks know over the past few years what has happened. We did what's called Act 89 in 2013, and Act 89 was supposed to fill a gap of funding, and it did. If we didn't have the Act 89, if it didn't pass, we'd be in really bad shape. But it wasn't enough, and we had always hoped that the federal government would pass a funding bill to fund the interstates. The interstates are as old as I am, so, and they all need work done. So we don't have enough money. They all are coming due at the same time, and there's just not enough money statewide. So what they did was they took a lot of money from all of the MPOs and the RPOs, the planning organizations, and put towards this central pot to fund the interstates, which really hurting all of the regional planning organizations. And but that's what you have to do. You have to keep the main roads moving. So what do we do now? We need to figure out money to backfill all these needs. So the secretary started this initiative, and they're studying all types of different funding sources. They've started the transportation, the TROC committee, where they're looking at opportunities for different types of funding. They're investigating mileage-based user fees, across the nation. That's what a lot of folks are looking at, because all the electric type vehicles, they're not using the gas, so the gas tax is kind of antiquated. So we're trying to figure out how can we move away from the gas tax. We're looking at higher registrations, registrations for electric vehicles that might be higher because they're not paying a gas tax. There's a lot of things being discussed nationwide, statewide. Obviously, I see the question popped up here, and I did want to avoid it as much as I could because we're still working through a lot of the issues, but we are looking at possible tolling, not just there's 9 bridges statewide they're looking at, but, you know, is tolling an answer? Is tolling other interstates an answer? You know, how do you get the people that actually use the roads to pay for the roads? But yeah, the problem is sometimes too, is some of the things that we're looking at, you want to capture people that are driving on our roads from out of state too, not just just the people in the state would have to pay for things. So they're looking at, you know, what would you need to do to make sure you capture all of those dollars that are people, you know, when they buy gas, the gas tax is capturing those funds. So those things are all being looked at right now as part of the Pathways project and part of TROC. There's nothing has been completed yet. The studies are still in process. Both of them, the environmental document is still in the works for the Pathways project. And on the 79 project, that is still being investigated, still being worked on. They're looking at the possible diversion, the diversionary issues that you know, that's a very congested area down there, and what are the impacts to the diversion routes. That's all under investigation right now. So I don't really have much more to report other than, you know, the project has always been a project. It was a project that wasn't to be funded when the Southern Beltway was to be done. When the Southern Beltway gets done, we're going to have 3 lanes to 2 lanes to 3 lanes. So the project itself was always a project. We just never had a way to pay for it. And it was suggested that maybe tolling it would be a way that we could build it. So that's kind of where we're at with it right now.
Great, thank you for all of that insight. Going to switch gears a little bit on you and talk about what's one thing you wish you had known when you started your career.
Oh, wow. I guess, you know, as a young female engineer, I think you look at things a little bit differently than maybe you do as someone who has 35 years in. I think, you know, you learn a lot. I don't know if I would have changed too much. You know, you become the person you are by making the mistakes that you make and making the choices that you make. I've always done a really good job of balancing too. I mean, I worked a lot when I was younger, but then once you have children, you know, Lisa, anybody that has children, you learn to balance. So I think I've handled that as well as anybody can. You never think you have enough time with your family. I think possibly, you know, maybe reflecting back on some of the things you do, because we're always moving on to the next thing. You're always putting out the next fire. You don't reflect back on some of your accomplishments as much as you maybe should. Write them down. And I don't think that we ever appreciate the people that we've worked with. I just went to the funeral 2 weeks ago of the man I would consider my mentor. He was a gentleman. I don't know if anybody ever met Mike Graham. He worked for the department for many years. He never finished college, but he was the smartest man I've ever met. Kind, considerate, and just a wonderful person. And I don't think, you know, we have people come and go with the department. You know, they retire, they walk out the door, you give them cake, and then you never talk to them again. And I don't think, you know, maybe spending a little more time with some of these great people that we worked with, you know, when we had them at the office is something I might have maybe done a little bit differently, because we were always just working on projects and trying to get stuff out. So it isn't an engineering question or a career question. It's probably just more of a Cheryl. I really enjoy the people I've always worked with and always want to spend more time with them.
Well, thank you. Now, going along with that, this is sort of a 2-part question. So what is the best piece of career advice you've ever received? And sort of taking a different spin on that, what is the worst piece of career advice you've ever received?
I'll take the worst. There was kind of 2, maybe. I will tell you, I was standing in my Penn State apartment ready to graduate when my uncle came in and told me that he would never hire a female civil engineer at his company, as he was a civil engineer. So that kind of, you know, gets your ire up a little bit, and you never forget that. So 36 years later, I'm still remembering that. So having someone that you kind of respected tell you that that wasn't a good career choice for you to go into was, I don't think, the greatest bit of advice. And then as a young female engineer too, on a construction site, everybody told you to blend in, pretend like you're not a female, blend in. And, I don't think that's a great advice for a woman. I think a woman should be a woman. They should, you can be a smart woman on a construction site. You don't have to act or dress or pretend like you're one of the guys out there. So I think that was pretty bad advice, and I would never give that to any of the young women that are coming in any type of a workforce today to blend in. I think everybody has, good ideas, and they should be able to share their good ideas. So I was brought up in that generation though, so I'm hoping it's a little bit different now. Some of the best advice kind of goes hand in hand with that, to be yourself, don't try to be someone you're not, listen to your gut. What I tell, we have civil engineers starting all the time. I tell them ask tons and tons of questions, and I have. No question is, not a question is never stupid, or don't ever feel stupid for asking questions. I've learned that people really like to talk about what they do. Most of the folks I've worked with, and especially don't think just because a guy's in a pair of dirty jeans and an old ripped t-shirt doesn't mean he doesn't know more than anybody out on the job site too. I've learned a lot by speaking with all types of people, learned a lot from all type of folks. So so that's some of the best advice that I would get would be to ask questions and be yourself.
Great, thank
Take
you.
risks, I
And
guess.
you mentioned just a little while ago about a mentor. Can you talk about how mentoring has helped shape your career and your career path?
Excuse me. I don't think, like, other than the gentleman I mentioned, I don't think I really had a mentor, because I'll be honest with you, when I started, there was 2 female engineers, and there was one female professional in the office. So now we have one female professional who was a manager. So now I can tell you we have 6 senior female managers. We have a lot of other, young ladies and working their way through the ranks. And I just think that it's just I guess it's just a lot different. I don't know, Liz, I don't know what you want me to, how you want me to get
No,
answer
thank you.
that.
Thank you. Now, looking forward, what is your hope, or what do you hope the environment for women in engineering and business will look like 15 years from now, and even what that role may look like more specifically at PennDOT?
Well, Lisa, the passion I've had with the Penn State Advisory Board. We're really struggling right now. Although we have more women in these positions, we still are not reaching to the underrepresented communities, and we're still not reaching out to folks that don't know what a great career engineering is. Not just for women, for men, for anyone. And you got to almost get to the schools, and you got to almost get to folks when they're younger, because right now I think the high schools are so overwhelmed. The counselors are so overwhelmed. They don't take the time to say, hey, Lisa, you're good in math and science. They don't take the time to say, you might want to consider a career in this, or you might want to be able to do this. And the kids in the underrepresented communities are not, there's nobody being able to tell them that. They don't have a Cheryl or a Lisa or Dusty or Georgia or someone who's their parent or their aunt to suggest these things to them. So I'm hopeful that we can keep continuing to reach out to get some of these ladies and men and that don't know what great careers that we have to offer at PennDOT and some of our transportation community. I'm hopeful that there's different colors of people that are in these management positions, female and men, in 15 years. I'm very hopeful for that. We don't get a lot of folks to apply. When they do, they're excellent. They've worked so hard to get to where they're at. They're just a fantastic employee. So I'm hoping that in 15 years, that we have a little bit more of a diverse work group, both the folks out and driving our trucks and the folks in the professional areas. So we're working to make it happen. We're trying as much as we can to do that. I said it's pretty cool right now. I can say that if you look around Pittsburgh, you have some very intelligent, very driven women leading the Port Authority, leading the Airport Authority, this transportation department, the city of Pittsburgh. It's changed a lot in 35 years, and I hope it just keeps getting better and a little bit more diverse and more opportunities for people. So I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you what it's going to look like. I can just tell you that's what I hope it looks like.
Great. No, I appreciate that. At this time, Jamie, I know I've asked a ton of questions, so I want to give a chance for the audience to do that as well. I don't see any in the chat that Cheryl didn't already address, so I don't know if anyone out there has some questions they wanted to ask Cheryl. Otherwise, I have a few other ones, but I'll let other folks ask questions.
Thanks, Lisa. Yes, please feel free to put your question in the chat, or even, raise your hand and we'll take you off mute and you can ask your question. Well, Lisa.
No, perfect.
Oh, Dusty has her hand up.
Oh, Dusty has her hand up, and we have one in chat as well. So Dusty, go ahead while you have your hand up, and then I'll ask the next one.
So Cheryl, I think you talked a little bit about, getting to the younger generation. You think you're not reaching them. Do you think that I've been reading a lot, and in fact, we had a program about the effect of the pandemic on women and how it has really affected them and put them back. Have you seen that? And do you think that that's also part of the problem, that, the challenges that women face going forward and how the pandemic might have affected their careers?
I am by no means a psychologist. I can only comment on the women that I work with or I deal with. And I really honestly haven't seen a lot of that in where I'm at right now in my career. But we've also teleworked for the last 18 months. So I think I might be able to answer that question a little bit differently when we are forced to go back to the office and people are dealing with some of the things that they haven't actually had to deal with in 18 months. So I really can't honestly answer that, Dusty, from a good perspective. Sorry.
No, I think that's a really thoughtful answer, because I know we're just easing back into work, and I think that we're just beginning to see the challenges that women have faced and whether they can come back the full time the way they were before, so it is going to evolve. So I think you had a perfect answer, really.
Well, I'm going to tell you something we're struggling with too. Maybe you all are. I'm trying to be fair. We're coming back to the office on August 2nd, if anybody is interested. We're going to implement a 50% telework policy that we've never done before. But there's certain people in our unit that are in our district that require to be there more than others. And I'm struggling with, is it fair that this clerk is forced to work at the office every single day, and this clerk gets to only work there 50% of the time? So I am struggling with that. And I'm probably going to see, to your answer, Dusty, I'm probably going to see people looking to make career changes that allow them some of that flexibility that they really didn't care about before. So I think that's something that's going to pop up across the whole transportation field. You're going to see people moving around based upon flexibility at their workforce, flexibility at their jobs. Obviously, what we're seeing now is if you're in construction, you have to be on site every day. But if you're in the office doing design work, you can work 50% of the time from home. So I think what we're going to be seeing is a lot of people taking on different assignments and different work tasks due to this teleworking flexibility. So that is something that you might see.
Great, thank you. Peter, you had your hand raised as well. Do you still have a question?
I guess a question / comment. Hi, Cheryl. Peter Quintanilla, ULI. and Michael Baker. But first of all, I want to thank you so much for that wonderful perspective. And I put it in the chat because I keep telling, all my kids, my daughters that, there's no dumb questions because the questions actually lead to something much more greater and bigger, right? And so you have to like study all the little avenues. If you don't, then you're going to just continue to stay within the box. So that's fantastic. So that's number one. Number two is, so in some of the things that I work with, and I often work with PennDOT, it's the whole multimodal, which is a big thing in that, especially after COVID, and what we have learned with COVID is that a lot of people, there's a lot of change in what's happening. Amazon, for example, in California now they're using drones, as we talked about earlier. So freight the way is changing, and how they're going to try to like get all the freights into in different shipping into like our houses. But the bigger trucks or the smaller truck, I mean, there's so much of that of mobility and connectivity along with multimodal thing that it's really hard to understand the direction. So I guess I don't envy your position in trying to come up with, how do you lead into figuring out what that future should be?
Well, here's the problem. Pittsburgh is the absolute worst city to have to implement multimodal facilities into an already antiquated, very narrow road network. It is very, very tough because it's not flat. The buildings are very old. The communities are old. They're close together, and everybody wants to have a piece of this road. And there's just not enough to carry the bikes, the peds, the trucks, the buses, and the vehicles. And that's really what we struggle with on roads like East Carson Street, for instance, is, there's all different modes on East Carson Street, but it's such a narrow old road. If you look, those buildings are built in the 1800s. You're dealing with it like, through Oakland and down through downtown. So multimodal in this area is definitely not easy. The West End Bridge itself, we squeeze 4 lanes of traffic on there. And I'm telling you, we squeeze them. And anybody who would drive a bus or a truck can tell you that. So that's it's really, really difficult, not just from a funding perspective, but literally from a geometric perspective. How do you address all these modes on these very antiquated, very narrow road network? It is very hard.
It is hard, but at the same time, it is kind of fun, right? The topography, I find it to be fun. Being from Miami, I love topography, so, but it is difficult.
It is beautiful. I grew up in Ohio, so I love it. It's beautiful. It's just, it's hard sometimes. It's difficult to design it. It's very costly, building walls. Right now we're widening 28 through the Highland Park Bridge, and it's literally wall after wall after wall is what it's taken to do that, because you're between well, here you have a community, but most of the time in Pittsburgh, you're between a river, a railroad track, and a hill. So you're always building very expensive walls. So that's what we deal with. That's what we're engineers for.
Exactly. Mike, did I see you raise your hand?
I did. Hi, Cheryl. Had a question regarding Route 28. Through the years, I've done multiple transactions in that corridor, and the rehab from Route 8 to the north side, which took time, has been very useful, but very disruptive. You just mentioned the Highland Park piece that's coming forward shortly. My question is, do you guys have anything in the future further up 28 towards maybe Harmerville, where you foresee any further? It looks like the majority of 28, that corridor, most of those improvements will be completed once you do Highland Park.
Yeah, Mike.
Is there anything up above you're considering that would impact that area up there?
Nope. 28, other than we have multiple paving projects coming out. So we're doing Highland Park, and then we just are working on a project now. The next section north of Highland Park, it's actually going to get that bottleneck. If you're coming southbound past RIDC Park, you have to break off and you take the ramp to go to Fox Chapel, and then you have one lane that goes straight. I think most of you know where I'm talking about there. That is actually going to be fixed too. So when that project's done, you'll have 2 lanes on 28 in each direction from the city, all the way up to Katanning. But we have multiple paving projects, because also next year or the following year, we're going to pave the other section that's in between Russellton and like Mills Mall. So there's some paving jobs going on, but the only actual reconstruction or widening, you're just going to see that little part fix go southbound at Fox Chapel.
Do you have any idea when that would be, 3 years from now?
Will it be,
5
when
years
it be
from now?
complete? It's actually going to be worked on this year. It's going to be worked on this year, next year. And the one that, the next section is going to be worked on 2022 and 23.
Great, thank you. We did have one question from Liz at Trans Associates that she typed into the chat, and it says, how challenging has recruiting been during this past year?
First, I want to say hi, Liz, and I miss having our women's forums, and I can't wait to have them again because I know Liz goes to our women's forum, so I appreciate that. Recruiting has been extremely impossible. We haven't been able to go to any job fairs, trade shows, anything. The good part is for us, we were hiring. A lot of the consulting firms obviously took a big hit with our finances being what it is. A lot of the consulting firms, we don't have a lot of projects coming out, so they have to watch hiring folks. So we were still hiring people. So we did get a lot of civil engineers, a lot of interest in with the civil engineers, which was good. But I will tell you, there were very few women that applied, and there were very few people of color that applied. We always constantly have a goal with that. But I will tell you, recruiting transportation construction inspectors, it's an impossibility. If anybody knows of anyone that wants a transportation construction inspector, let me know. You need 2 years of experience, or 2 years, 2-year degree, or years of experience. We can't hire them. I think we're down like 10 or 12 right now. We struggled hiring operators, having the unemployment compensation, paying that additional dollars. It just didn't pay for some of these people to come to work. So we were definitely struggling in some of these other areas other than engineers. So we're working through it. We're trying to put some plan together to try to start some recruiting. But I think with everybody, if you look everywhere, it says we're hiring right now. If you go anywhere, we're in the same boat.
Great, thank you for that. Jamie, do we have any other hands raised?
I don't see anybody, but let me scroll through here.
Oh, I think I see one.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, unmute.
All right.
Yourself. Hold on, let me unmute. Oh, ask to unmute. There you go.
Hey, Cheryl, Steve Masitis. How are you? Hey,
Hi, Stephen. I owe you a phone call back. I know.
Okay, good. Well, thanks. Just want to be on your radar. If there's an infrastructure bill passed, how many, say, shovel-ready projects do you think PennDOT has in the queue? Do you have a feel for that?
Yeah, I love this question because this is what I live for. Over the years, I love to get projects out, and I love to get them out in a hurry. Because sometimes when you get an influx of money, a lot of these rules and regulations tend to go by the wayside. You can move full speed ahead and get some things out, and you just make such a it's just such an energizer. But we don't have, I don't know if we had to move a lot of projects last year. So in our district, we had to move $140 million of projects from 20 to 21. And then when 2021 hit, we had another cash flow issue because we lost so much with COVID due to the revenues. We had to move more out. So instead of having $2.7 billion of lettings across the state this year, which is what we were scheduled to have, we only are having 1.9 billion. So there's $800 million of projects that are essentially going to be ready to go should an infrastructure bill come our way. Besides that, we have tons of paving jobs lined up that would only take a couple months to get out. So I can tell you, if we are fortunate enough to have an infrastructure bill, we will really make a lot of the construction workers around this area happy, because I think we have quite a few projects to get out the door and to keep everybody busy. Now, you travelers, you might not be as happy because you'll be seeing a lot of barrels and a lot of construction going on, but I think that's good for the economy. I think you would all agree.
You have to take it when you get it.
I
Thank
know.
you.
A couple other things too. I wanted to mention before I left is we do have some big projects in the works too. Besides the 79 at Bridgeville project, we've been working on the Banksville, the Green Tree and the Carnegie interchanges on the Parkway West for many years. And they aren't funded. A Banksville connector will be the Banksville interchange will be the first one in a couple years. That one actually is funded, but Carnegie and Green Tree are not. So we'd really like to fix those XL, decel lanes. We're also working on 910 at 79 or 79 at 910. Where those ramps get backed up every day. We have some options we're looking at there. And also on the Parkway East, we did a study a few years back, and we're looking to potentially make some improvements at the Squirrel Hill interchange, maybe do a collector distributor, which is a road that kind of cuts off there. So you can take some folks out of that traffic, the Squirrel Hill Tunnel. So we have all these projects underway. Without a federal infrastructure bill happening, I don't know if they will ever come to fruition in the next 10 years. So we really need to, work with our legislators to try to get some money sent our way.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat. So at this point, and I don't see any other hands up, I just want to say thank you again, Cheryl. It's been fun. Thank you for all the great insight and for spending your some time this afternoon with us. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to Jamie for a few closing remarks.
Thank you all. Thank you for your kindness and your questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Cheryl. We appreciate you being on here today. And thank you, Lisa, for being our wonderful moderator. Before I go, I just wanted to, say thank you to Dusty for all of her awesome leadership for WLI, and our steering committee, who are amazing women. So happy that we have them on board here at ULI Pittsburgh, and all of you for coming and joining us and supporting our programs. And we hope that we know that we're going to be back in person very soon. So we'll be excited to see everybody in person. A couple things is one more thank you to our sponsors. Again, you all are so wonderful to support ULI Pittsburgh. And also we have another program coming up, and I am going to put the link in the chat for registration. We have on June 29th at 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. our Bus Rapid Transit BRT and Transit Oriented Development TOD What's Next program. And just a quick overview, ULI Pittsburgh is excited to present a detailed walkthrough of the downtown Oakland East End Bus Rapid Transit Project and its critical connection between Pennsylvania's second and third largest economic and employment centers, Join the Port Authority CEO and Chief Development Officer for what will be an exciting and informative update on the Port Authority's significant and catalytic investment in BRT, its socioeconomic impact on our region, and new organization that is working toward a more multimodal future, which is Mobilify. So we hope to see you all there. Dusty, do you have anything to add before we say goodbye today?
Oh, I was on mute. No, I just want to again thank Cheryl and Lisa and everyone for coming. It's been a really great program, and I really appreciate everybody's participation.
Great. Well, again, this program is recorded, and I will be sending it out. So we'll all see you soon. Have a great afternoon, everybody.